She walked away like the connection meant nothing. No explanation that gave you peace. No real closure. Just distance, silence, and that cold shift in her energy that made you question everything you thought was real. Maybe she disappeared overnight. Maybe she replaced you faster than you expected. Or maybe she kept you close enough to feel hope while slowly pulling herself away. And now, after all of that, she's back. Not casually, not accidentally. Something pulled her back into your orbit. The question is why? Why does a woman return after she was the one who broke the bond in the first place? And more importantly, why do so many men destroy themselves the moment she comes back? Because if you misunderstand what's really happening here, you'll fall into the exact emotional position that made her leave to begin with. But if you understand the psychology behind it, the entire dynamic changes. See, most men assume a woman leaves because she stopped caring completely. But that's rarely the full story. Women often leave while still emotionally attached. That's what makes the situation confusing. Her actions say one thing, but her emotions say another. A woman can feel deeply connected to you and still pull away, not because the feelings vanished overnight, but because something inside her became emotionally unsettled. Women experience relationships emotionally first, logically second. When those emotions become too intense, too uncertain, or too conflicted, distance can start to feel like relief. Pulling away becomes her way of regaining emotional control, and that's the part most men never see. They only see the rejection, the coldness, the sudden change in behavior. But internally, she may have been fighting confusion long before she walked away. Then there's another layer most people ignore completely. Modern dating constantly feeds women the idea that there's always something better waiting around the corner. Social media attention, validation from strangers, endless options at her fingertips. It creates an illusion that staying in one place means missing out on something greater. So sometimes she leaves chasing a feeling, not a person. A fantasy, a different emotional high, a belief that maybe there's more excitement somewhere else. And in the moment, that belief feels real to her. But attraction also changes when the emotional balance inside the relationship changes. The moment she feels completely certain she can never lose you, something shifts. If your entire emotional state starts revolving around her approval, if you become overly available, overly predictable, overly dependent on her attention, she stops feeling the tension that originally pulled her toward you. Because attraction isn't built on comfort alone. Women want emotional security, yes, but they also want to feel that they're with a man who has his own center, his own purpose, his own emotional strength. A man she respects, not a man she fully controls. And the dangerous part is this. Many men react to distance by giving even more of themselves away. They chase harder, text more, beg for clarity, try to prove loyalty. But desperation changes the energy immediately. The more emotionally reactive you become, the more certain she feels about leaving. Now here's where everything starts to turn. A lot of women don't leave expecting the story to actually end. They expect access. They expect emotional availability. They expect you to remain exactly where they left you. And when that doesn't happen, her emotions begin shifting in ways she didn't anticipate. Because silence affects women differently when it comes from a man they thought they understood. At first, she may feel relief, freedom, even excitement. But over time, another emotion slowly replaces it. Curiosity. She starts wondering why you disappeared emotionally, why you stopped chasing, why you suddenly seem unaffected by her absence. And the moment she feels your emotional energy detach from her control, something inside her becomes unsettled again. Now she's thinking about you differently, not as the man waiting at the door, but as the man she may have underestimated. Then nostalgia begins doing its work. Human memory is selective. After enough time passes, the emotional intensity of the breakup starts fading, while the emotional highs become sharper in her mind. The laughter, the connection, the way you made her feel understood. And because you're no longer constantly available, those memories gain emotional weight. Absence creates contrast. That's why so many women begin romanticizing the very connection they once walked away from. But the strongest trigger of all is usually comparison, because reality rarely matches fantasy. She may receive attention from other men, she may explore new connections, but eventually she notices something missing. Maybe the excitement feels shallow, maybe the chemistry lacks depth, maybe those men give her validation without making her feel emotionally challenged, and slowly, without even realizing it at first, she starts comparing every new experience to the emotional impact you once had on her. That's when the return starts becoming inevitable. But what most men completely fail to understand is that when she comes back, she's silently looking for one thing before anything else. And the deeper that comparison becomes, the more she starts realizing that what she walked away from wasn't as replaceable as she once believed. Because emotional connection is difficult to recreate, attention is easy to find, validation is everywhere, but genuine emotional chemistry, the kind that lingers in someone's mind long after they leave, that's rare, and this is where your silence becomes powerful. Not forced silence, not manipulation, real silence. The kind that happens when a man stops trying to convince someone to see his value. Because when you completely remove your emotional presence from her world, something unexpected happens inside her mind. The certainty she once felt begins turning into uncertainty. She starts checking, wondering, thinking about you during random moments she can't explain. Why hasn't he reached out? Why does he seem unaffected? Did he finally let go? And the more questions she has with no emotional access to you, the more intense the curiosity becomes. Mystery creates emotional tension. When a woman can no longer predict your emotions, she starts feeling drawn back toward understanding them. That emotional distance starts pulling on her psychologically in ways most men never realize. Because people value what feels uncertain, especially when they thought they already had control over it. And eventually, all of those emotions begin colliding at once. The nostalgia, the comparison, the curiosity, the fear of permanently losing access to you. That's when she reaches back out. But this is exactly where most men lose everything. They interpret her return emotionally instead of psychologically. The second her name appears on their phone again, they collapse back into old patterns. They think her return means she suddenly understands their value now, that she's fully ready to commit, that the pain is over. And because of that assumption, they hand all the power right back to her. Immediately, they respond too fast, too emotionally, too available. They welcome her back as if nothing ever happened, hoping warmth and reassurance will secure the connection this time. But all it really does is confirm her original belief, that no matter what she does, you'll always be there waiting. And once a woman feels that certainty again, the attraction begins fading all over again. Because respect disappears when consequences disappear. A woman needs to feel that your attention has value. That access to your energy is earned, not automatically guaranteed the moment she decides she misses you. But most men are so afraid of losing her again that they overcompensate emotionally. They flood her with validation. They reopen emotional doors too quickly. They start explaining how much they suffered after she left. And without realizing it, they erase the very emotional tension that brought her back in the first place. The mystery disappears, the challenge disappears. The emotional uncertainty she was feeling suddenly gets replaced with reassurance. Now she knows she still has complete emotional access to you. And once she feels secure in that control again, her emotional urgency fades. Then comes another mistake that destroys everything. Men start demanding explanations. Why did you leave? Were you talking to someone else? Did you ever actually love me? They become obsessed with closure because they believe understanding the past will protect them from future pain. But emotional attraction doesn't work that way. The more you interrogate her emotions, the more pressure enters the interaction. She starts feeling judged, cornered, emotionally managed, and instead of feeling drawn toward you again, she starts feeling the same emotional heaviness that pushed her away before. The truth is, she may not even fully understand why she left herself. Human emotions are rarely logical in real time. What matters now isn't dissecting the past. It's observing the present dynamic. And one thing women notice instantly is emotional insecurity. Some men react to a woman's return by pretending they no longer care. They become cold, passive-aggressive, distant in an obvious way. They delay responses strategically, try to make her jealous, try to punish her emotionally, but forced detachment always reveals hidden pain underneath it. Women can feel when a man is acting from wounded pride instead of genuine emotional strength. Real indifference doesn't need performance. A man who truly knows his worth doesn't need revenge energy. He doesn't need to prove he moved on. His calmness feels natural because it comes from internal stability, not emotional reaction. And that's the energy that changes the entire dynamic. Because when she comes back expecting emotional access, and instead meets composure, restraint, and self-control, something shifts in the way she sees you. Now she has to earn her position again. Now she starts questioning where she truly stands in your life. Which brings us to the part most men never understand. When a woman returns after hurting you, she's not only paying attention to what you say, she's studying who you became while she was gone. That's why your response matters more than your feelings. And the first mistake you must avoid is reacting as though her return automatically restores her place in your world. Because the moment she senses that nothing has changed inside you, she begins relaxing back into the same certainty that made her leave the first time. So when she reaches out, slow everything down, not as a game, not to manipulate her, but because your life no longer pauses itself for someone who once walked away from it. That difference matters. When you reply, stay emotionally grounded. No bitterness, no emotional overflow, no desperate excitement hiding underneath forced confidence. Just calm presence, because she expects one extreme or the other, either anger or immediate emotional surrender. But calm restraint unsettles her in a completely different way. It forces her to feel the emotional distance she created. And when that happens, she slowly begins realizing something she never expected to feel the moment she came back into your life. That she no longer knows if she still holds the same place in your life. And that uncertainty changes everything. Because now the dynamic has shifted. She expected relief from you. Excitement, maybe even gratitude that she came back at all. But instead, she's met with a man who no longer needs her return to feel complete. That's the moment she starts seeing you differently, and this is where most men make another mistake. They immediately try to prove they're worthy again. They start over-explaining their value, showing loyalty, trying to recreate the connection as quickly as possible. But the strongest position you can take is the opposite. Stop trying to convince her to choose you. Let her show you why she deserves access to your life again. That doesn't mean becoming cold or arrogant. It means shifting the emotional frame. Instead of acting like the relationship automatically resumes where it ended, allow her to feel the weight of her decision. A simple response can completely change the energy. I didn't expect to hear from you. Not angry, not emotional, just honest. Now she has to explain herself. Now she has to step toward you emotionally instead of watching you chase her for reassurance. That shift matters more than most men realize, because attraction grows when effort becomes mutual. And one of the most important things you can do after she returns is maintain the independence you built while she was gone. Don't rearrange your world the second she reappears. Keep your routines, your goals, your momentum. Let her see, quietly, that your life continued moving forward without needing her presence to sustain it. Women respect men who remain emotionally grounded in their own direction. A man who collapses emotionally every time a woman enters or exits his life becomes predictable, but a man who maintains his center becomes difficult to replace. And she feels that difference immediately. When she asks what you've been doing, don't make your growth about recovering from her. Don't turn your healing into a speech. Just let your energy speak for itself. Maybe your focus changed. Maybe your habits improved. Maybe your peace became more important than emotional chaos. She doesn't need a dramatic explanation to feel that transformation. She'll sense it. And then comes the part many men avoid because it requires emotional discipline. Boundaries. Just because someone returns doesn't mean they automatically regain the same level of access they once had. If she hurt you, trust should not instantly reset itself. A healthy man doesn't punish people emotionally, but he also doesn't ignore patterns that damaged him before. So if she becomes vague again, inconsistent, emotionally manipulative, pay attention. Don't argue. Don't panic. Don't try to force clarity out of her. Simply stand firm in what you will and won't tolerate. There's power in calmly saying, I'm not interested in repeating old cycles. That sentence alone reveals self-respect, because now she understands something important. Your presence is no longer guaranteed simply because she decided to come back, and that realization forces her to either meet you with sincerity or walk away again. Now here's the deeper question most men avoid asking themselves. Should you even take her back? Because her return alone means nothing. A woman can come back for many reasons. Loneliness, curiosity, emotional comfort, disappointment with someone else, fear of losing access to you permanently. None of those reasons automatically mean she's ready to build something healthy. That's why emotion alone cannot make this decision for you. You have to look deeper. Why did she leave in the first place? If she walked away because she constantly chased novelty, validation, or emotional excitement, there's a strong chance the same cycle repeats once comfort returns. Patterns matter, but people can also grow. Sometimes a woman leaves because she lacked emotional maturity. Sometimes fear, confusion, or outside pressure influenced her decisions. And sometimes distance forces both people to confront parts of themselves they never would have faced together. That's why you stop listening only to words. Watch behavior instead. Anyone can say they miss you. Anyone can say they changed. But consistency reveals truth over time. Does she show effort when things become emotionally difficult? Does she communicate clearly? Does she respect your boundaries now in ways she didn't before? Those answers matter far more than emotional speeches. And most importantly, pay attention to yourself around her. Not your attachment, not your loneliness, not your memories, your peace. Because missing someone is not the same thing as being good together. A woman who genuinely values your presence will bring emotional stability into your life, not constant anxiety about whether she'll disappear again. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is walk away permanently. Not out of revenge, not to teach her a lesson, but because you finally understand your own value enough to stop accepting uncertainty disguised as love. There's a different kind of strength in being able to say, "You no longer have access to me," especially when part of you still cares. Because self-respect often requires difficult decisions that emotions alone would never make. And strangely enough, that's when many women finally understand what they lost. Not when you begged, not when you chased, not when you waited, but when they realize you became a man capable of letting go. At the end of all this, the real power was never about making her come back. It was about becoming someone who no longer measures his worth by whether she stays. And once a man reaches that point, something changes quietly inside him. He stops fearing abandonment. He stops chasing validation. He stops confusing attention with love. And whether she stays, leaves, or returns again someday, he remains centered in himself. That's the kind of presence people feel long after the conversation ends.